Hello again, sixth graders. Today we are going to be looking at the eText assignment for lesson 5, which is about severe weather and floods. This is an assignment you can also do using your actual textbook. And if you're using your actual textbook, that's going to be pages 82 to 90 that you're going to be reading and answering some questions. On the first page, we start out with a couple of guiding questions that we don't necessarily need to write down an answer to, but these are things you should be thinking about as we're going through this lesson. How does severe weather affect human life? And how do humans protect themselves from severe weather? On this first page, as always, the Savas website has got the vocabulary that is new in this lesson. And as always, if you click on any of those, it's going to give you the definition right there. So if you are curious or you need that reference later, it's right there on the first slide. Continuing on to the second slide, we're going to be looking at this visual, which is a photograph of a hurricane taken off of the United States. This would be Florida right here, and the Atlantic Ocean would be over here. This would be Hurricane Matthew. We're going to start off by looking at two connected questions. In what direction are the winds swirling around the location you identified? So if we look back up at this picture, you're going to write that answer in the notebook box on your iPad, or you're going to be writing that on page 82. So if we look at this picture, you can see the satellite photograph shows the hurricane, or to use the word cyclone from the lesson about air masses, you can see in this that the cyclone is spinning in this direction. So the winds are coming from the outside in towards the middle to the low pressure system. So this would be a cyclone, and they're moving in a counterclockwise direction. They're moving opposite of the direction a clock would. And so that's going to be your answer for this first one. The second question asks, how might this storm affect people living near its path? Well, I'm sure all of us have seen or read or heard about hurricanes in the news. Hurricanes can do a huge amount of damage to locations that are near oceans generally. Hurricanes are known for heavy rains, and so those rains can cause extreme flooding. They are also known for winds, and those winds can damage property. They can damage homes, businesses, trees. Also, with these hurricanes, you hope that people are able to take shelter or to evacuate, and that there is no loss of life that's involved in this hurricane. So any of those would be possible answers for the second question, how might this storm affect the people living near its path? Once you've answered those two questions, we get into the reading that talks about the types of severe storms, using Hurricane Matthew again as an example. We've got a vocab word here for approximate, and storm is down here highlighted. We have an academic vocabulary question for you to answer here. What is the difference between an approximate or an exact number? Approximate, remember, was defined for you up above here. So if you click on that, it's going to give you a definition of approximate. It describes an estimate of a value that is very close to the exact value. And so in your notebook, you would say the difference between an approximate and exact number would be that an approximate number is very close to the exact number. You might use that word estimate that they used in the definition. The next slide talks about winter storms, which is something that, of course, all of us are used to in Minnesota. As you are looking at this page, there is one question for you to answer. Make sure that you take a look at this graphic. It's going to show you how lake effect snow works. And you can see here the different amounts of snow that happened in this one example of a storm. That is what this graphic is referring to. But we've got one right about it question. It says, identify the actions you can take to remain safe during a severe storm of any kind. So in this question, really brainstorm. Think about things that you do in the winter if there's a big snowstorm coming or happening currently, or think about what you may have done in the summer if there was a severe thunderstorm happening, and write down those ideas that you've got there for this question. Our next slide focuses on thunderstorms, and it talks about the actual definition of what is a thunderstorm, and common things that are found with it. As you read through this page, make sure that you are looking at the pictures if you're using your textbook, and reading the descriptions below those. It does talk about figure 3 lightning strikes, which are something that can cause a lot of damage during thunderstorms. But there's no questions on this slide, so we'll continue on. The next slide returns to hurricanes, which we talked about on the first slide. Hurricanes gives you the definition of what defines a hurricane. It's a cyclone where the winds exceed 119 kilometers per hour. As you're reading through this page, there is one activity to do here, and that would be found down at the bottom here, this literacy connection. It says, cite textual evidence. Textual evidence is information or clues that reinforce or support an idea. Reread the third and fourth paragraphs on this page. Highlight the evidence that supports the statement that hurricane winds are the strongest around the storm's center. So if you go back up here to the third and the fourth paragraphs, this is where you're going to be looking for evidence that the winds are the strongest near the center of the storm. And I've got these underlined here for you. It does tell us that bands of heavy rains and high winds spiral inward toward the areas of lowest pressure at the center. The lower air pressure at the center of the storm, the faster the winds blow towards it. Hurricane winds are the strongest in the narrow band or ring of clouds at the storm's center called the eye wall, which encloses the storm's eye. So those would be the textual evidence that answer that question. The next slide talks about how hurricanes move. And so there are two questions on this slide that you'll be answering in your notebook boxes here. The first one says, why don't hurricanes form in oceans in northern latitudes of the world? And so when you're reading this, you want to look back at this first paragraph, and it talks about things that hurricanes need to become a hurricane and continue on as a hurricane and build their strength. And that's what's going to be your answer. It's going to need to include something about hurricanes needing warm, moist air to fuel it, and the cold waters don't provide enough energy to fuel the hurricane. Then we also have a graphic here that shows the progress of Hurricane Sandy over the course of several days in 2012. As Sandy made landfall, the hurricane lost strength and became a post-tropical cyclone. What do you think caused the storm to turn back toward land and strike the northeast? And so you've got the notebook space here to answer that question. And you notice here how Hurricane Sandy started down here, went across the Caribbean, and moved towards the United States coast, but then went back out into the ocean. So some things that you could think about could be a change in wind direction that might have caused it to change direction and head back towards the coast. Our next slide talks about another type of severe weather, which is tornadoes. They can be very, very dangerous due to the destruction that they cause. On this page, they talk about the formation of tornadoes and where they're more common. The one question, once you've read through this, that you need to answer would be down here. It says to look at this image, and they're talking in this image about the Fujita scale, which is the scale used to talk about the wind speeds of tornadoes. And so if you look at this picture, you are asked to pick which rating is shown in the picture. And so if you look down below, you can see that you've got some houses that are partially destroyed, but you can see this row right here, they are completely gone. And so if you look at these and compare these types of damage, it's probably going to be in the level 4 or level 5 area because these houses are no longer standing. So you're going to put that into your notebook. On the next slide, we're looking at floods and drought. Floods are something more common that we hear about in the news often. They're a big danger that's involved with severe storms. So it's got our definition of that word here: overflowing of water to normally dry areas. And then as we continue on, it gives us also some background information on droughts and excessive heat. We've got a reading check question on this slide. It says, what are 2 ways to help prevent floods? And so for that, you'll need to look back up to this first couple of paragraphs. And we're talking here, it's giving us information about controlling floods. So I would imagine that if you look in here, you're going to find some ways to help floods be controlled, but also some examples up above here that give ideas about the causes of floods, with ground not being able to absorb water. So here for the notebook answer, you'd want to say something about building dams, building levees that can be used to control the floods and prevent the damage that can come along with them. On the last slide, we're learning about storm safety. And so what are some things that can be done or that are done in advance of a severe storm? And it talks mostly on this page about the different things you can do to stay safe in different types of storms. So we've got winter storms. You can, it's dangerous because you can limit your vision, so you won't be able to see, and it'd be easy to get lost. Those strong winds make you cold very often. You need to stay indoors and keep a supply of water and food on hand in case there is a power outage. And so we've got a little bit of information about the different types of storms, and you're going to use that to answer the reading check question down here. What safety precautions are common to all types of severe weather? And so after you have read through these, you're going to be looking for things that they all have in common. So after you've read about hurricanes, thunderstorms, winter storms, and tornadoes, hopefully you would notice something like, or you would think of finding a place that is safe, where you're going to be protected from the storm. And you always want to try to be watching for watches and warnings put out by the Weather Service to give you a heads up on those different types of severe weather that could be coming. Once you've finished this question, make sure you've got them all done, and you are going to be finished with this assignment. So make sure you submit it in Savas, or if you did it in your textbook, please make sure to take photographs of those pages and submit them in Schoology to your teacher. Have a good day.